coordination side of things. So there are a bunch of facilitator controls, and there's a question mark, ask for help, that you can click. That'll all occur at the room level. So if I click that, it actually adds things to the room and the timer, etc. We can actually share links if you wanted to. So I can pull up a Google slide of some form, and if I add the share link there, you'll see it's a bit hard to notice the first time, but on the room that's called Powers Time to Talk, there would now be a shared link there that you can kind of click and open. So it just means that every room that we have, we can add some shared links and things, and it's just room contextual, and so people can open up things from other rooms, see what they're up to. Maybe it helps you decide to join them. That's cool. And everything is participant driven. So click to the room that you want to go to, up to you to decide where you go, and we'll just retain a little bit of context around how many people are in that room. So there's 11 people here at the moment, and then you'll see people moving in. And hopefully it just makes things a bit more human in terms of how you interact with this stuff, as opposed to having Terry to force us into rooms and decide what's good for us, I guess. Hopefully that's a good rundown.
I think I'm probably not saying all of what you've described, because I'm on an iPad and it forced me to the application, the Jitsi application.
Yep. So we're using a Jitsi Meet app for mobile devices. So in order for you to navigate around, the navigation won't look so great because we haven't actually built our own custom app for it. If you go back to your browser, and then you'll be able to see the rooms. You won't be able to see the numbers, but I guess if people tell you how many people in which, you can kind of reconnect to different rooms.
Okay.
But it allows you to still connect. It's just not as seamless as if you were using it.
Okay. So we need video for this session because my desktop doesn't have a camera. Probably doesn't matter.
I guess it's
could he be both on the iPad and the desktop? Then we could see his face with the iPad with no sound, and he could see us on the desktop.
I'm guessing that's possible.
Quick, new user story. Write that down.
Yeah. I'm going to test in production.
Yeah.
Production's always a test, right?
Yeah.
Right. One thing I noticed that on my desktop, if I I was looking at these little 3 dots that say more actions, and I noticed that if I go to full screen, then I lose the breakout rooms. I don't have a view of the breakout rooms anymore.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's because we're actually full screening the video component, and then as you escape back out, then you get the rooms. You can actually just collapse the rooms on the left as well, if you wanted to do that. So there's a little chevron that will be right near the left-hand side.
Right. So so there's 2 things in chat. So we open the chat, and then it covers up part of the screen. But there are couple things in chat. And I think that might be our best chance for a marketplace. For doing open space kind of things, we can put the sessions. So just logistically for open space, how many here just use the little, if you're don't have your video on, just use the little hand icon down there in the bottom left corner. But how many here are familiar with open space and know the principles of open space and all that stuff? Been in it a whole lot.
I've done some coach camps.
Okay. Space. Yeah. All right. So I will go through that pretty quickly since we've only got an hour. Just as a reminder, The invitation here was so the theme of this session is some time to talk about what's going on in the world, to talk about what's going on in our lives, talk about the challenges we're facing, talk about the ways we're helping each other. I thought it was interesting yesterday on Twitter, I saw so many things about people saying, "Oh, please, no April Fools tomorrow." And then when I got on it this morning, someone had invented April Cools for highlighting people in your life that you think are, worthy of notice, right? And so, just interesting things that people are doing. That's another kind of thing to talk about so that we don't think everything is not working well. We started a little conversation earlier about every system has an upside and a downside. Every theory base, every movement has an upside and a downside. And we're getting plenty of information about the downside of this one. So what are some of the upsides? And so that's a sort of a thing that you might want to talk about. Anyway, so in Open Space, we take time to discuss the things that we have passion about, that feel compelling to us, the topics that we really want to share with some other folks. And then also that we're, we are so connected to those.
We lost her.
We lost Diana.
You should hopefully try to recover her word network. How do we go? Hi, Diana. You'll be muted to start, so you will just have to unmute.
I just got force ejected from this. So I don't know what that was about.
Who did that?
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so the principles of Open Space are the right people show up. That's who all is here. That's who will show up in the breakout rooms with you. It'll be the other folks who have made time to be here. And, there's lots of cool people in the world, but the right people are here and will be here in every conversation. The conversations will start when they start. Who knows how much longer how much longer I'm going to be on here. And they end when they end in general. But the idea being that we will have some time boxes, and that ends when they ends part is about if there's a conversation that comes to the end of its time box, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the conversation. You may want to figure out another way to continue that elsewhere. And whatever happens is the only thing that could is an homage to the power of emergence. When you get numerous parts of a system together that have never interacted before, you cannot predict what's going to come out of that. And so you can only sort of stay in a place where you are ready for the surprises that'll come along. So letting go of too many expectations or trying to force those. And then finally, the newest of the Open Space principles is wherever it happens is the right place. And so this is an interesting right place for us to be in and to explore right now. And then there is one law. Those are the principles. There's one law of Open Space, which is sometimes called the law of personal mobility or the law of 2 feet. I think of it as the law of learning. If you find that you are in a discussion where you're not learning or contributing, that you are encouraged to leave that discussion and go find someplace that you can contribute more, learn more. We want that to happen. We don't want anybody to feel stuck in a conversation where they're not benefiting by either their contribution or the learning that they're getting. So those are the basic things. Our marketplace is these rooms that we have over here that have some names. and I think we need to pick an amount of time. So I suggest that we start with maybe 15-minute time blocks. I didn't try that the first time around and see how well that works. It might not be long enough. Face to face, I would say it's way not long enough, but having been in breakout rooms and video conferences before, I think it will be plenty of time. So what I encourage you to do is in the chat, write a topic that you would like to talk about and say which room you'd like to talk about it in. And we'll just do this in multiple rounds. We'll populate the rooms here and then set our timer for 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and repopulate and just see how that works.
I've added a Google drawing as well to the shared link. So the shared link at the very top left is now a Google drawing. So if you click that, I'll just show where I'm talking about. Just in this thing at the room, if you click that, that'll open the window. You'll need to use the desktop to do that. So if you click that button, it'll pop open a Google drawing. And I just quickly wrote a couple time boxes and things in there, and I don't know, rooms. So we can always use that and add additional spaces if we needed to.
I have no idea what you're talking about right now, Peter. I can't tell where you're pointing or what's doing. So the first topic is using this tool.
Just on the room, on the very top left, there's a little open shared link. So you can click this button and it will pop up a Google drawing. So we can use this if people wanted to, and just take a text box and draw a topic, I guess.
Okay. Oh, sort of like a Miro or yeah. Okay.
Yeah, without having to use a Miro. Right. It just allows you to connect whatever you want actually to any room.
Okay. All right. So there you go, folks. We could have set it would be a great idea to set that up ahead of time, I think. But so in the meantime, who has something you'd like to talk about with a few other people? Okay. Get a few more here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're down to 10 of us, and we have 4 topics. So let's start with this. Otherwise, we'll use all our time in writing topics and we won't get to have any time for discussing. So, Ed, would you like to be in room number 2? And anyone who wants to talk about being remote has allowed old school management to reassert itself, join Ed in room number 2. Terry proposed, how are you coping? Are you anxious? And she will be in room 9. Room 2 and room 9. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
So we've got Diana and Terry and Emile.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I pronounce your name right? I apologise.
Amélie.
Is it Emile?
Yeah.
Emily.
Amélie.
Okay. Amélie.
It's unusual,
Est-ce que
so
vous
I
français?
respond to anything that is close. Oui.
Est-ce que vous français? Oui. Bonjour. Comment ça va?
Ça va bien.
Absolument. That's my limit of French.
That's okay. We shouldn't have that for other people, and they can follow us.
Awesome. Okay. So I guess we get going. So maybe if I just explain why I put that in the chat. I work for a large organization, and we've been through a big transformation over the last couple of years, and we were starting to get quite good at it and quite embedded. And then the coronavirus hit, and we scattered to the
I think your mic might have. Was that me?
No, I hear the buzzing as well. I don't know if the mic died or.
Going back and forth, and
You gotta get into it, don't you?
Yeah. So tell us more about your topic.
Okay, so I saw this article, which I'll briefly share because I have fancy screen sharing powers. So you should be able to see it now.
Oh, Dave, yeah.
Yeah, so he's had this quote, like, in a crisis, you should always deploy an innovation team alongside business recovery teams to capture novel practice. And the way he does it at the end is basically go around your teams and you can ask these 3 questions here. What have you done differently this week? What have you learned, and what's gone wrong? And I'll stop that. I did this. I was 8 teams where I am, so I interviewed them all just to capture the stories. So I'm speaking like 2% of the time, ideally here, just, what's worked well, because obviously everyone's gone remote all of a sudden. We're a co-located, 2 buildings, but co-located business, same time zone. So huge change. So yeah, it's just looking at what are the common problems, and there were little innovations, right? So like the people that decide doing a social thing at 4 p.m. on a Friday, they got Trivial Pursuit out and played Trivial Pursuit across the team, and things like that. And I thought that was it was very interesting. I reported back on like the things I found, and now people have gone, oh right, that's a really common problem, not just that team whinging. I said all 8 teams had these same 3 problems, so it's something worth fixing, right? I found it quite interesting. I want to talk, like, has anyone else done anything like that, or anything else?
Yeah. I've not. I've been thinking a lot about coming at it maybe from a different point of view than Dave. I was thinking about the Satir change curve, and how, certainly we've had a foreign element, and certainly we're now all in the craziness zone, or whatever she calls it, I forget. And that means that we need to be sort of on the alert for our transforming ideas, which to me is that turning that mindset into, let's look for where is the innovation going to lie here? It's going to be in here somewhere, not sure where that is. And so I've definitely, I've talked to some other folks about that, and we don't have a formal way of making that formal, like he's suggesting, to actually have an innovation team. But certainly think it makes sense in larger organizations.
Yeah, he comes from a place
larger than 2 people, which is my size of my organization. Right. Yeah. But
he comes from a knowledge management background, doesn't he? So he's very big on that sort of capturing knowledge point of view.
Right. Right.
Yeah, having 8 teams and teams to talk to does help.
Yeah. 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 No, you're good. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Mhm.
Never
Well,
waste a good. Yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit Chaos Monkey, right? And Netflix and there, I mean, they did create that for themselves, something that randomly comes in and disrupts things so that they can make sure things always work. It's yeah. Mm. Daniel Quinn for the win. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know when, but 1 week you'll be told on Friday you're all remote.
Yeah.
Starting Monday.
Yeah.
And you don't know where it's
Yeah.
going to be, so just catch you out. I'm not sure how often we're going to all get thrown home every now and again, but it would be a fun fire drill to do.
Yeah. Well, and it's an interesting thing. Go ahead, Terry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I was hearing the other day that there were some folks who had some plans. There's a ski resort in northern New Mexico had plans to close for the season in mid-April, as they usually do. And so as the virus started, becoming more and more in people's awareness, and different kinds of service things started shutting down, they were still like, well, we're going to close in mid-April anyway, right? Well, then all the ski resorts in Colorado all shut down because they're all small mountain towns. They all are very vulnerable to all the people coming in from other places, and the New Mexico ski resort took one look at that and just envisioned all those skiers heading their direction and overnight decided to close. So people woke up the next morning, ski resort's closed. Don't come here. and that was that, And so even when people thought they had a kind of a plan in place that seemed reasonable at one point in time and so on, and was a pretty short-term plan, all of a sudden it's even shorter term. That's what your thought reminded me of, Joe. It's like, on Monday, don't come to work.
Terry, before you got cut off, you were talking about a book called Ishmael, which had an impact on you. I don't know the book.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a Jim Collins thing, right? And it's Jim Collins. No, different organizational theorist. Anyway, that wrote the books about organizational change, and his first step was you need to create urgency, and something like this gives you a whole new sense of what does it mean to create urgency. And handing around articles about trending just doesn't cut it. Our industry is going to have trouble 5 to 10 years from now. It doesn't have the same kind of valence that
So we can't just give a McKinsey report.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've noticed has been, I think, one of the most difficult things about doing organizational change now versus 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when people were more invested in the organizations that they were in. And they may not have been planning to spend their whole careers there, but they were planning to spend maybe the first 10 years or the first 15 years of their career, or they started someplace and now they've come to a new place and the plan is to be here longer term. And so they did care about the future of the organization. But when you only plan to be in a leadership role in that organization for the next 3 years, 5 years is a long time, they don't really care about planning for the future. They really do get into the next quarter kind of mindset, and to heck with whatever happens after my tenure. That's somebody else's problem. And I have found that that's a really dampening effect that has on a lot of our change efforts. Is just that movement toward people just not staying very long in an organization, particularly high-level leaders not staying very long in an organization. Mm. Right. Mm-hmm. No. Yeah.
I think we need to get back, do we? I was just going to say, I liked your idea though, and I think you should do like a fire drill where like 1 week a year you're going to go remote, and you're not going to tell you what week, right? So on one Friday, just going to be told Monday, no office.
Yeah.
Create the urgency.
Be prepared. Yeah. All right.
Okay. See you back in the room.
So if you're not the first 4 people, you have to unmute yourself.
So the room just moved me. Or are we all back into time to talk? I guess we're all back.
If you click the confirm button, it brings you back. If you click the cancel,
that's what brings us back here. Okay. Yeah. Somehow I was not remembering that all the rooms are named Powers. So when it said, I'm taking you back to the Powers room, I was like, well. So,
they're all Powers rooms.
They're all Powers rooms. Yeah. All right.
The chat would have cleared because we all moved out of the room. So I know there was a few other topics, but
Yeah.
I did. I think we did capture some of them on the other
Right.
board.
So there's still a minute and 14 seconds going in room 11, I guess.
Oh, that's negative.
Oh, okay. Oh, overtime. Okay. So how was that for folks? How did that work? Was that enough time? Too much? Not enough? How was that timing?
It worked well apart from my technical glitches, so I lost a bit of time.
Okay.
That's just life now.
Yeah. It's the technical glitch life. All right. So I think we probably have time for one more session, and then we'll come back together and sort of glean our learnings. So for those who've just joined us, what we're doing is typing a session that you would like to propose, a topic for people to talk about that you feel strongly about, into the chat window. Chat is in the bottom left of your screen, of the big video screen. And type a message in there about what you would like to talk about next, and then pick a room. But we'll get all the topics up first, and then we'll. You're going to go into 2? Okay. Should we just go right down the road? Amelie, you want to go into 9? And Jim into 10. And Jim, the way you get there is you just click there and it drags you over willy-nilly. We've learned that. And when you get in your room, type your topic into the name of the room. There we go.
Yes, it was. It was interesting thing because I think the reason why I picked this topic was there's been some really good conversations I think that have been happening at Lendlease where I'm working at the moment, just in terms of we're doing check-ins and things, and got me thinking, and because like now it's so hard to know how people are dealing with it, which I think was the topic that you had a bit before, but is there a real opportunity to kind of build psychological safety now, and how would we do that? I know we haven't set the timer. Let me just jump into the main room and I'll set the 15-minute timer before.
Yeah. Yes. Hi, Terry. Yeah, I'm here. Apologies, I don't have video, so I'm just a blank screen to you. That's really interesting. So so people are being nicer because the pressure's off. The pressure was, where was the pressure coming from? That's fascinating. Yeah, that's I find that really insightful. I must think about that as well, about actually slowing down as well. Yeah.
Sorry, thanks. Because people know that it's so uncertain now, they're more willing to accept that things can't be controlled. Whereas before, there was a much bigger sense of everything can be controlled. Whereas now things are shifting a little bit. So I was in a conversation the other day where, someone had actually in a big 10-person video conference had actually just said, "Look, I'm not feeling that great. I'm a bit uncertain. I'm getting a bit stressed out being by myself." And it came out so naturally, and no one derided that person at all. And I don't think that would have happened before. Yeah. So I was curious as how do we maintain that? How do we build this without a crisis?
Yes. Or manufacture crises every so often.
There you go. That's one of the solutions.
Yeah. It definitely has for us. It's been a lot more humane, I must say. It's so different now that the fact that you could just see people's real lives be in the background of their video calls. It certainly made people a lot more empathic and a lot more sort of caring for each other. Whereas before, it always seemed quite superficial. It's kind of they were going through a checklist. Oh, I need to ask somebody how they're doing. Right, I've ticked that off. Get onto the agenda, sort of thing.
Actually, and the other funny thing is, I've actually probably found myself being more calmer with my kids. So if I because it's the work from home all the time now, whereas before it used to just be once every now and then. If they came in, I'd be like, leave. I'm working and trying to get them out. Now I'm kind of a bit more comfortable to say, oh look, what do you need? And people are actually comfortable in you dealing with that because they know you've got life happening.
Yes.
It's hard to separate world from home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is that going to be a problem? Because I'm guessing there are people like I don't mind it too much, but some other people is that like I can just imagine longer term it will be a real problem for them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and that's going to impact people's psychological safety, isn't it? There might come a time where the expectation is we're always on because you're always available.
And I found that actually a little bit. So one of the negative things I think around this video conferencing thing is that every 30 minutes there's like a meeting now because people just book 30 minutes and they don't book like an hour. At least in Australia they're not. So you don't have that time in between a session anymore. It's kind of like jump and jump and jump and jump between video conferences, and you kind of do it immediately.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably taken away from a bit from your personal space.
Yeah. What are your teams doing now that is improving their bonding? Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I know the subject psychological safety, but people are obviously thinking about their physical safety as well. I think in Australia, to a large extent, we might have dodged the bullet. I don't know anybody directly who's been infected, but has anybody else been aware of how this might be impacting people's lives? Mm. Yeah. 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 And that's a really good point, because, like you say, it's going to happen. Someone's going to be directly impacted or indirectly impacted, and just perhaps being prepared for that. I know as this was kicking off a few weeks ago, our organisation I thought was way too blasé about it, and from the exec was saying everything's fine, and I actually made the call about a week early. I said I'm not coming in. I went work from home a week ahead of when they announced it, and a week afterwards, 2 people in the building where I worked were positive. So, it's kind of troubling to think about how it could have unfolded.
I guess that's the other thing, right? Like, so I'm going to, like, people are going to do things that aren't aligned to our personal value systems, right? And is that going to result in? It's probably not too bad at the moment, but it's kind of bubbling away, right? And so I'm guessing that's going to result in a lot of aggression and anger and things because we didn't do things earlier on or whatever that might be. And that's going to be something that I think will build.
Yeah.
Being conscious that it will happen, I think. Hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, definitely. There's definitely an upside from that experience. That's something I've always banged on about with teleconferences, video conferences. Is I've always said one remote, all remote, and people have laughed, but I think they get it now because they're on the receiving end. Whereas in the past, it was a dozen people bundled into a meeting room and had a teleconference, and everybody else was on the end of the line silently listening because they weren't allowed, weren't facilitated to interact.
Yeah. There's still 2 minutes, so yeah. The other thing that I was thinking about a bit was, there's a bit more of the water cooler after remote drinks and all that type of stuff. Is that actually getting to the core of that human connection, or is it just kind of scratching the surface? Because it feels good, like short term is what I'm worried about, but it's not really,
Yeah.
providing that further level of connection. Hmm. And I'm guessing that's because it's the same. Is it the same people coming to the water cooler, like your team, direct team? So it's a bit smaller network. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the intentionality is really key, isn't it? And that's really resonated for me because that's kind of highlighted what I think one of the background concerns I have is this lack of intentionality. So I'll have to think a bit more deeply about that. Yeah.
All right. See you guys back. Yeah.
Cool.
Nobody's talking.
I'm talking, but she's muted.
Oh.
Yeah,
Press
first of all,
Oh,
Right
there we
next
go.
to you.
Yeah. I was just saying that I felt like I was chasing people out of the rooms because every room I went into I went through all the rooms and they all went to 0 right after I got there. So we don't have a lot of time to debrief this, but maybe we could just go around in the 3 minutes we have left and just, what's your takeaway about this, either about a topic or about this format, whatever you'd like to say, just, one sentence takeaway, one fairly short sentence takeaway. And who will start?
I'll have a go.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed the process. It was great working with people I've never met before. The key takeaway for me, which Peter came up with, which was about needing principles for remote ways of working. And that's really helped me. So I'll be thinking about what those principles should be.
Amelie. I'm just going to go right across my grid here. So
I had done open space before, but never in such a short time for the sessions. And I was curious to see how it worked. And I'm super glad that we had meaningful conversation, even in 15 minutes. So I know that's a possibility now.
thank you. Jim.
So one thing I found was interesting in the conversations was getting to know each other better in kind of a different dimension when we're remote. So the different things we're doing to connect, it's revealing different aspects of the people that we work with that we haven't had an opportunity to do before. So I think that's fascinating, that even though we're distant from each other, in some ways we're connecting on a different level. And that's revealing certain things about us, which I find fascinating. The other thing was, that's happening at the team level. I'm curious about the dynamic between the team and their leadership.
Yeah.
And we had a quick conversation about how do you go to the Gemba as a leader when your teams are remote. So that's just an interesting one, is we're getting closer connections as team members, but we might be getting more distance from our leadership.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting. How do you look over somebody's shoulder? So less micromanagement too, maybe. Sandra.
Or more.
So, Jim, write this down. This is a good topic for a conversation next time. Guys, I loved it. It was great conversation. I want to do this again, so count on me on next sessions. It was really nice. I loved it.
Great. Joe.
For building trust remotely session was interesting. So one of the things is like where the social things, right, where they've gone. And Amelie was telling about a format she uses, which is ice cream. So you'll get an ice cream, and then there's 3 questions around, what's your favorite flavor, right? And where was the place you had the best ever ice cream, right? Which is a bit more about you. And I thought it was a pretty nice way. You can just do the thing together, but with a nice extra set of questions. You can get to know each other better and get a bit of that social stuff you get in the office. And that was my fun thing to do. I'm going to get some ice cream.
All right. Terry. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Peter, I'm going to let you have the last word. So I'm just going to say thank you for inviting me, Terry. This was we've talked a lot about experiments. And for me, this was a really interesting experiment to see how to make this work. And I'm glad we're able to, even though we're going a little over time, cram in a little bit of harvest here at the end, because I think this is it's so important. So Peter, as our host.
Thanks. So we had a good, interesting conversation about psychological safety, and there were some interesting things actually there around, what things were working, what weren't, and I think the key takeaway was, you can build really good psychological connections if you intentionally do it, and then some of those things that we're not intentionally doing, they're kind of fading away a little bit. So even though you're in different groups, if we're not conscious around that. So that was interesting. And then just being aware that, a lot of future emotions are probably going to be coming out as, people are getting angry about what's happening and things, and knowing that it's not just the now, there's going to be stuff that's happening for sure. I think that's was really interesting.
That's interesting, yeah. So thank you, everybody, and I hope the rest of your day, whatever is left of it, or if you're heading into tomorrow, I hope you have a good day in the rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Diana. Everybody.